Minister Narendra Modi has wrapped up the second leg of his three-nation tour in Ethiopia. Today, the Prime Minister addressed the joint session of the Parliament in capital Addis Ababa.
It is a moment of a great privilege for me to stand before you today. It is wonderful to be here in Ethiopia, the land of lions.
Something major just happened in Africa, and most people missed it. While global attention stays fixed on traditional power centers, India quietly stepped into one of Africa's most strategic countries and secured a trade deal that speaks volumes about the future of global influence. What makes this moment truly revealing isn't just India's growing role, it's the noticeable absence of the United States. This isn't about diplomacy as usual. It's about how Africa is reshaping its partnerships, choosing economics over ideology, and signaling that influence must now be earned, not assumed. The question isn't why India is moving closer to Ethiopia. The real question is why the United States is no longer at the center of the conversation.
Something important unfolded in Addis Ababa that goes far beyond diplomatic protocol. The Indian Prime Minister's visit to Ethiopia and the trade agreements that followed were not routine gestures of goodwill. They marked a strategic moment that reflects how global influence in Africa is being quietly reorganized. The most revealing detail was not what was signed, but who was missing from the equation. At a time when Africa's partnerships are rapidly evolving, the United States was notably peripheral, underscoring a deeper shift in how power is exercised on the continent. The visit itself centered on expanding trade, investment, and industrial cooperation. Agreements focused on manufacturing, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, technology, and skills development. These sectors are critical to Ethiopia's long-term economic transformation and align closely with India's strengths as a major industrial and technological economy. The language used emphasized mutual benefit and shared growth rather than aid or dependency. This framing matters. It reflects a relationship built on production and exchange, not assistance and conditionality. Ethiopia's importance in this equation cannot be overstated. It is one of Africa's most populous states, a rapidly growing economy, and a political anchor in the Horn of Africa. Its location gives it strategic relevance along key trade corridors linking Africa to the Middle East and Asia. As a diplomatic hub for the continent, Ethiopia also carries symbolic and institutional weight. For any external power seeking long-term influence in Africa, Ethiopia is not optional, it is essential. From India's perspective, Ethiopia offers scale, strategic access, and alignment with a broader Global South vision. Indian companies already have a presence in Ethiopian manufacturing zones, particularly in textiles and pharmaceuticals. These industries are labor-intensive and match Ethiopia's development priorities. The new agreements deepen this engagement, signaling a move from scattered investment toward structured economic partnership. This is how influence is built in the modern era, through supply chains, jobs, and long-term industrial cooperation. Equally important is the political dimension. Ethiopia and India share an emphasis on strategic autonomy and a preference for non-alignment in great power rivalries. This shared outlook reduces friction and allows cooperation to proceed without constant geopolitical signaling. The relationship feels practical rather than performative, focused on outcomes rather than narratives. That pragmatism is increasingly attractive to African states navigating a complex global environment. The absence of the United States from this moment is therefore not incidental. It reflects a broader trend in which Western influence in Africa is becoming less central to major economic decisions. While the United States has remained engaged in security cooperation and humanitarian assistance, it has been far less visible in trade-driven, industrial partnerships. Its engagement has often emphasized political conditionality and short-term crisis response rather than long-term economic integration. For Ethiopia, this creates a clear calculus. Development requires factories, infrastructure, technology, and market access. Partners who prioritize these needs naturally gain influence. Those who do not risk being sidelined, regardless of historical ties or rhetorical commitment. The India-Ethiopia agreement filled a space that Western actors have left increasingly open. This development also fits into a wider continental pattern. Across Africa, governments are actively diversifying their external relationships. Rather than relying heavily on a single bloc, they are building flexible partnerships with a range of actors. This strategy increases bargaining power and reduces vulnerability to external pressure. India's growing role is part of this diversification alongside other emerging economies that approach Africa as a partner rather than a project. What makes India particularly effective in this environment is its engagement model. Indian firms are accustomed to operating in developing economies and often emphasize local employment, skills transfer, and affordable technology. This builds domestic support within African countries and reinforces state-level agreements. Diplomatically, India avoids overt intervention in internal political affairs, which resonates strongly in a region sensitive to sovereignty and historical external interference. The implications for the United States are significant. Influence in Africa is no longer maintained primarily through aid budgets or military partnerships. It is increasingly shaped by trade flows, investment decisions, and integration into national development strategies. If the United States does not adapt its approach, it risks becoming a secondary player in shaping Africa's economic future. This does not mean Africa is turning against the West. Rather, it means African states are asserting agency. They are choosing partners based on alignment with their priorities, not on historical expectation. The Ethiopia-India agreement is a clear example of this agency in action. It demonstrates confidence and strategic clarity from an African state that understands its own value. Seen in this light, the agreement is not a one-off diplomatic event. It is part of a gradual but unmistakable shift in the global order. Power is moving toward those who can offer practical solutions to development challenges without excessive conditions. Africa is no longer a passive arena for competition. It is an active participant shaping the terms of engagement. The moment in Addis Ababa matters because it captures this transition in real time. India strengthened its position as a key global South partner. Ethiopia expanded its strategic options. The United States, by contrast, watched from the margins. That contrast tells a larger story about how influence is being redistributed in the 21st century and why Africa is at the center of that transformation.